Hello, everyone. I'm Jim Garrison. I want to welcome you to this session of Humanity Rising as we take up the issue of how we individually and in our communities develop more self-assurance, self-esteem, and radiance about who we are and what we're doing in our very turbulent and conflicted world. Before we dive into that domain, I want to make some comments on unfolding world events, as I always do. And I want to make very, very brief comments because much can be said about the speech that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel made yesterday to the joint session of Congress, and also the speech that President Joe Biden made last night from the Oval Office of the White House. I went to several demonstrations around the Capitol during the early afternoon before Netanyahu's speech at 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and then went back to my flat and watched his speech on TV. So I was holding both contradictions, both polarities, ends of the polarity in my consciousness, and wanted to just comment in the following way. The speech was extraordinarily effective. His oratory was flawless. He received multiple standing ovations from a mostly Republican audience. 80 Democrats did not go, including half a dozen senators. Kamala Harris had declined to participate, although she's going to be meeting him privately today, possibly in conjunction with President Biden. And yet the content of what Netanyahu said was so loathsome and provincial and xenophobic and militaristic that it bears a response. And I'll just make two quick responses. The first, as he roused the crowd, he said, our homeland is the homeland of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, where Isaiah and Jeremiah prayed, and where the Maccabees took on the Romans. This is our land. Well, the reality is that it is not. When Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob came to Canaan, it was then around 1800 BC when Abraham first came, according to cultural historians, full of Canaanites, tribes like the Amorites and the Ammonites and the Jebusites and the Philistines, the Hittites. There were Egyptians there. The land of Canaan was full of people that had been there for hundreds and thousands of years before Abraham even showed up. Just like today, when the Jews, after a 2,000-year absence, came back after their diaspora in the 1930s and 1940s, under the illusion that the Jews were a people without a land and Palestine was a land without a people. They found it was full of Palestinians. And they've proceeded to try to do to the Palestinians what Joshua and the Israelites did after they left Sinai and Egypt, to commit genocide by wiping them out. And that's what we see live on TV every day and have for 8 months. So what Benjamin Netanyahu said was a lie. It was untrue. The second point that I think is essential to make is peace was never mentioned. In my recollection, the word peace was never used. He was talking about total victory. He was talking about taking on Iran. He was talking about the alliance between the United States and Israel to defeat the terrorists. He ridiculed the people that were protesting as useful idiots for Iran. He created the great demon of Iran as behind everything, with the essential message that when we finish with Hamas, we have to take on Iran. His speech was a call for a conflagration in the Middle East that should not be fought and cannot be won. Just like the notion of total victory over Hamas is an absurdity. Every oppressed people, including the Jews, have sought liberation. In the UN Charter, oppressed people are specifically noted and sanctioned in terms of giving them the right to fight for their liberation from an oppressor. The occupying power, the oppressor, which in this case the Israelis are given no rights. So the notion that we can engage in perpetual war in the Middle East, in this absurd alliance between the United States and Israel to defeat the infidel, with no prospect of peace at all, except for total victory, is simply an invitation for unending war. And that is something that we need to stand against. That is something that we need to speak out against. And that's why I'm speaking out against it today. We need peace. The Palestinian people have as much right to Palestine as the Jews do. There should be either a two-state solution, or they need to model what Abraham did and Isaac did and Jacob did at the beginning of the Jewish visitation into Canaan. Get along with people. There's plenty of room for a unitary state in which Jews and Palestinians, Christians, other ethnic and religious groups all live together in harmony. And what is blocking it is the impulse based on ethnicity and exclusion to dominate a land where people already exist. So I just wanted to say that to offer people a response to what Netanyahu said, in the hopes that we will continue to stand with the Palestinians and against this ceaseless violence and genocide on the part of Israel against the people who have just as much right as they do to be there. The contrast between Netanyahu's speech and Joe Biden's speech only 6 hours later could not be more stark. Sitting behind the Oval Office, we saw an elderly man, wizened with age, physically frail, making one of the most dignified and noble speeches that I've heard in some time. A recognition out of decades of service to his country, with policies that, as you all know, I haven't agreed with on many occasions, but nevertheless have deeply respected the man and the office that he has held, because he was voted into that office by a majority of Americans. And to listen to Joe Biden talk about his love of his country, to listen to him express his deep caring and the realization that love of country needs to supersede the egoistic gravitation toward power that all politicians are heir to. Ambition burns brightly in the souls of them all. And for him to pass the torch to the next generation was, I think, a measure of the dignity that he has retained to the end of his career. And so I wanted to just note that and express my appreciation for the way he has turned over the generational power to Kamala Harris and to a new generation. And it's worth noting in closing that the outpouring of money from over 1 million small donors, 65% of which is, from what I understood, it may have changed by now, were first-time donors that have poured into the Democratic Party, is a measure of both the relief and the support that people are making around the country for a woman who is clearly capable of taking on Donald Trump in this campaign and serving as president of the United States. It's also worth noting that on the day before yesterday, over 40,000 women of color had a conference call where they committed themselves to work with Kamala. And the TikTok was ablaze with the Gen Zs enthusing about Kamala. So what is going to be required over the next 103 days as of today is a fire from the torch that is being passed that will animate the women of this country in particular, and the youth of this country in particular, and progressives in this country in particular, who will be mobilizing around the sovereignty of the body of women, the future of our youth, and the protection of our republic. And as I said several days ago, this will be a brutal campaign. And only if we organize as effectively from the bottom up as Kamala and the Democrats will be organizing from the top down, will we secure the integrity of the American Republic. So thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Humanity Rising. It's a great time to be alive. I'm telling you, this is an incredible moment in American history and world history, and the transition of generations and all the ways that we understand the world and seek to secure the enduring legacy of freedom and equality into the next generation. Radiance is what we need. And so it's synchronistic that today we're going to talk about radiance and self-esteem and how we empower ourselves. And I want to introduce now Lori Ann Spagna, who's a best-selling author, who has been developing a body of work and training programs and presentations to empower individuals through coaching and mentoring on how they can animate themselves in greater and greater ways. So, Lori, I want to invite you to turn on your video and enter the program. And then we've invited Lori. She's going to take maybe 10 minutes, 15 minutes to tell us more about herself and the general contours of her work. And then we're going to dive into a dialogue till the top of the hour. Thank you so much, Lori, and welcome.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Jim, and thank you for your wonderful sharing today. That was just, I'm so moved by your passion and your care for humanity, and I'm honestly so grateful to be here with you all today. So yeah, thanks for having me. So yeah, I'll just go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Lori Ann Spagna, and for more than 20 years, I've been learning how to utilize energy and consciousness to make global impact for humanity in service to the light, what I call the light. And I'll define that. And really, I'm all about helping evolutionary leaders, just like all of you, to really upgrade how we are contributing to humanity, making global impact using energy and consciousness, because it's really my inner deep gnosis, my knowing that the power that we have within us to transform our physical reality is how we're going to make the greatest change. And so that's what I'm here to chat with all of you about today. And I love that you're also passionate and caring about humanity, as I know, I am. And so let me first just define what I mean by the light. And in my definition, the light is the expansion and the evolution of humanity. It's the positive upliftment of humanity. It's for the good of all with harm to none. And I know that seems like a very lofty concept, like for the good of all with harm to none, ideally. And it is really peace, harmony. It's about peace, harmony, and unity for all beings on earth, animals, plants, humans, the collective, and while we still get to maintain and keep our individuality, our individual perspectives, our individual nature, our identities, and yet we really through the elevation of our consciousness and our energy, we really understand this higher consciousness perspective that we are ultimately all connected, even with our individuality, and that we are all ultimately part of a unifying source, however we uniquely identify that source, however we uniquely relate to and experience that source. And so when I'm talking about working with energy and consciousness to make global impact, I'm going to unpack that a little bit here. But what I'm really talking about is up-leveling and expanding our unique individual connection with that infinite source of energy and consciousness that is infinitely available to us, that is omnipresent, that is available to us to learn how to unify with as individuals, and then to utilize that energy in ways that serve, support, and assist the collective, the whole of humanity. And always, again, in ways that are good, that are right, that are divinely aligned. It is a spiritual practice, but your spiritual connection could be through science, through energy, right? It doesn't have to be a religious type of thing if that's not necessarily what your connection is. So, so from that perspective, let's take it down just from the idea of us as individuals, and let's sort of, if we can, kind of break it out, how we can begin to make this global impact in ways that are different from what we've perhaps been trained or learned or taught in the past, which I call old paradigm. Let me just define that a little bit first. Old paradigm to me is this idea that it's exactly what Jim was just talking about, this idea that it's a victory and it's just pointing to war and there's no peace or harmony to be had. There's no other way. It's this way or the highway. It's to the harm of the many for the benefit of a few. That's old paradigm. It's I'm right and you're wrong. It's, this way or the highway. We've been living in that, right? I don't need to spend a lot of time on that, but that old paradigm way, what I think is, excuse me, very significant here is that in the old paradigm way of operating, we as individuals have believed that the external world has power and authority over us. And you can take that to anything, external leaders, false authorities who seem to be representing that they somehow care, but really don't, are willing to send people to war, to kill them, whatever, or to profit at their expense to the harm of the many, right? Where we believed that the external world had power over us, even simple examples of believing or perceiving that some kind of something we're allergic to, or a virus, or something, anything in the external world could have power over us. That someone or something could force us, dominate us, manipulate us, even if the media tells us to believe something. Another example, even if the schooling system trains us to think this is the only right way to do something. Even if the food system tells us it's okay to eat something that's unhealthy for you, or it's okay to put something in the water that could potentially be unhealthy for you. So the idea is that old paradigm where we believed that the external reality had power over us, and where we believed what we maybe were told without necessarily using our own critical thinking or developing our internal capacity for discernment or for higher reasoning, or even for some of the concepts that I'm going to explore with you today. So let's dive into that. In the new paradigm, excuse me, where we're beginning to utilize more of our greater capacities for energy and consciousness, what we're doing in the new paradigm is we're developing more of our internal intuition, which means we're utilizing through multiple tools that I'll explain, more than just the over analytical left brain that we've been trained to use in the old paradigm. We start utilizing more of our right brain intuitive capacities. We start accessing more of our many brainwave frequencies. So in the old paradigm, we're mostly using beta brainwave, analytical doing brainwave, and delta brainwave to sleep. In the new paradigm, we start utilizing the alpha brainwave, light meditation, peace, harmony meditation. It's not even meditation, right? You just start becoming more peaceful because you're tapping into that brainwave frequency and utilizing it in an active way, more deliberately. More of our theta brainwave, which allows us to connect with infinite intelligence, and even learning how to access more of our gamma brainwave, which allows us to affect external things we perceive to be external to us, including potentially the whole of humanity, provided that we're aligned with what we call universal laws, which are laws of physics. We can learn those. And when we start working in harmony with those, we can start working in favor of what is good for the whole. In addition to this, and I hope everyone's following me, I know we'll chat about it more, we start developing the brain matter in our heart. Now, some people I've been made fun of for saying that in the past, but I do want to reassure you. For example, the Institute of Heart Math has already validated that that's scientifically real and valid. We do have actual brain matter in the heart. That means the heart is not only a magnetic, energetic field that creates a magnetic, energetic field, but it actually has brain matter that we can develop. So we start utilizing that, and we start formulating more of a connection here between both sides of the brain and the heart center. In addition to that, we also know that the gut has brain intelligence, and that's also scientifically true. So we can start developing healthy gut brain based on becoming more discerning about what we receive into our body, utilize, take in, not just on a physical plane, but on the energetic plane. So let me go into the whole energy thing, but I want to say that all of these things can be developed and cultivated through many different kinds of practices that we can explore. And I want to say also that one other piece before I talk about the part that I was just about to go into about energy is what we also have the capacity to do within us is to clear away what is often referred to as the ego or egoic structure. We now realize that egoic structure is mostly energy that is stored in various parts of the brain, specifically the amygdala, the two amygdalae, and also the hippocampus, and also is stored up in energy centers in the body. Now, traditionally, those energy centers have been called chakras, and we know them in the body, right? If you're probably familiar with those, but regardless of whether you call them chakras, they are major energy centers that regulate the areas of the body. So the buttocks, the tailbone regulates that part of the body, and the reproductive center regulates that part, and the solar plexus regulates that part, including all the organs and all the energy in that area. The heart center, the throat center, this called the third eye, which regulates, or the ajna, which regulates the most important parts of the inner brain, not most important, but the parts that are most dormant within us, known as our pituitary and pineal glands, organelles in the center of the brain that are master glands that are primarily calcified for most people. So we can decalcify those to awaken higher intelligence and greater potential for discernment. And we can even begin to know with that greater potential when someone is lying, manipulating, deceiving us, for example. We can utilize greater potential within us to determine what really is for our highest and best, and not just necessarily accept what a so-called false leader or false authority tells us, or that someone says something is good for us that isn't necessarily, such as maybe a drug or something. I'm not poo-pooing on anything in particular. I'm saying that we can develop our capacity to know what truly is for our most benevolent best and make choices in accordance with that in ways that are more aligned for us. Okay, so I hope all that makes sense. And I'm just going to talk a little bit more about energy. We know that everything's energy, and we know that when we're utilizing energy or when we're around energy, different energy can make us feel more positively uplifted or more negative. So, for example, a lot of times if we're putting ourselves around people, places, groups, authority figures, media, that really brings us down or drains us, that's a kind of energy. Whereas if we're putting ourselves in situations, circumstances, scenarios, nature, drinking healthy water, taking time to take care of ourselves in ways that feel good and right. Now, I'm not talking about a bubble bath. I'm talking about getting ourselves healthy exercise, healthy enjoyment, healthy food, healthy time to be still, healthy time to reconnect with this energy. We really can strengthen ourselves and uplift ourselves in ways that are positively uplifting, that allow us to expand our capacity for service and contribution in the world, that allow us to expand the potential within us, not only to navigate these turbulent times with so much more grace and ease, and even, yes, joy, that through doing that, we become part of the solution on Earth. And when we start learning how to utilize energy and realize how all energy is connected, we can really assist and support in being the energy that we want to bring into the world. So, for example, if what we're talking about is that we want more grace or more peace or more harmony in our world, we can actually bring more of that energetic into our embodiment. And we can learn how to use that energy. Really, what a practice that I do is where we bring it into our bodies and beings. We activate that energy, which means to like kick it up, and we anchor it into all of our energy centers, which means to really strengthen it and make it solid and real. And then we amplify it and expand it. We permeate it through our entirety. This is all learnable skill, very powerful tools. Now, when you start permeating it through your entirety and radiating it out all through your field, you are now becoming that energy, whether it's grace, whether it's peace, harmony, love, joy, whether it's inspiration, whether it's optimism, enthusiasm, any energy, divine kindness, loving kindness, compassion. These are all energetic frequencies that are available infinitely, but we have to learn how to resonate with them. And the way we resonate with them is learn how to bring them in, call them into the body, and utilize them and start to become them. Now, one other piece I want to say that's very important is that we also have to be simultaneously working on what I call clearing, healing, and resolving those parts of us, of our consciousness. In other words, our thoughts, our beliefs, our belief systems, our points of view, our perspectives, our judgments, our emotional entanglements, energy that is still trapped in that old paradigm. And when I say trapped, it's stuff that's not the true magnificence of who we are. Because the true magnificence of who we are is the energy that we feel most called to, most inspired by, most uplifted by, that we want most in our world, that we want to most be and experience. And so it's within us to start working with this energy, knowing that it's infinitely available. And as we start experiencing it directly, we come into a deeper level of knowing like this is real. And not only do we start feeling better, we feel deep connection with ourselves, with others. We become more of a beacon of light for ourselves, for one another, for others, even people we don't necessarily know. We start designing a life that feels deeply, richly rewarding and fulfilling. We start developing more and more divine, what I call divine certainty and clarity, because we realize these are the energies we're embodying. These are the energies we're moving into our lives and our future. We're no longer trying to change the external world by playing in the external world in the same way. We're utilizing the internal changes to affect the external. And so we develop this kind of divine clarity because we know more and more who we are becoming. We're becoming what we want to see in the world. We're becoming aware, more and more aware of the subtleties of different energies that feel good, right? Positively uplifting, expansive, and the ones that feel contracting. And when they feel contracting and upsetting, we realize we can use this energy to expand and infiltrate, so to speak, but only for the good of all, with harm to none, that which is more of what we want. And we do have global impact because as we start to learn, and this is one of the things we don't so much have time to get into right now, but as we start to learn more and more about universal laws, which are laws of physics, but are also spiritual, so they're aligned. They basically say the same thing in different ways. We start realizing that there is a law of one that allows us, as part of one collective, to be in service to the good of all. We can make global impact. So I want to pause there because I think I may have used my time, but I want to make sure this is making sense, and I can definitely go deeper. We can go more into it, but I think I might have gone for about 10 minutes already. So let me just do a quick check-in. How am I doing there? And is this all making sense? And how's this sounding so far?
Sounds very good, Lori. Thank you so much. I'd be very interested in hearing a little bit more about your pathway in terms of your own biography
Oh, yeah.
and
Okay.
how got into this particular domain? Did you have particularly powerful experiences? Did you read something in a book that just catalyzed your thinking and changed your life? How did it all happen for you?
All right. Well, I want to say it wasn't anything I read in a book or anything I learned from anybody else. I had the big picture, and then I'll give a little bit of the history, but was that I had enough of those, what you call come to Jesus moments. So
Mm,
here's how I define a come to Jesus moment. I'm curled up in a ball on the floor crying. This is not working for me. I'm not happy. I'm not having a good life. Please help me. And in those moments, there would be enough stillness that I would hear or be told something like, here's what we're going to do for you, on you, in you, through you. Be still and allow it if you're willing. And then you're going to learn this and teach others. So most of the practices that I teach were taught to me through my authentic connection with Source, most of them. But here's the
and when you say,
backstory.
wait, let me just pause you. When you say authentic connection to source, was that a channeling experience? Did you meet beings?
Yeah.
Did you go into trances? How did that connection happen for you?
Yeah.
Existential.
Okay. This part of the story might be a little bit longer, but I'll give you the whole of it. So out of college, I went into corporate America, right? 20 years in corporate America, miserable. Okay. I started smoking over those 20 years. I developed a smoking habit, excessive, 2 packs a day, drinking alcohol, excessive, 8 beers a day, overeating, like ridiculous. Thyroid was off, hair was falling out, extreme overweight, extreme amounts of coffee, overspending, oversexing, all of it. 20 years I lived like this every night, crying, miserable. And the message from the external authority in my life, who was basically my parents, well meaning, loving me, was stick it out or get another job. That's all I ever got. So eventually, what happened was my brother died of a drug overdose. And very soon after his death, I started getting messages from him. And the messages were, we're from New York, and he had a very heavy New York accent. He would say, "Hello, it's your dead brother, Jeff. And you need to see what you're doing." Is this like he would say, you're doing the same thing I was doing. So I worked with that for about a year to realize, like, okay, I'm not making this up. This is actually my dead brother, Jeff, talking to me. And it wasn't long after that I started getting like lots of so-called dead relatives. And it wasn't long after
Really
that I
amazing.
started getting a lot of celebrities too, because they were easy. For some reason, they were just easy to connect with. I got celebrities who would say things like, "Tell them we're okay. Tell them it's okay. Like tell them not to fear death." Things like that. But then I got the animals because I did quit my 6-figure job like that with all that craziness, and I became a dog trainer. Right away, I started getting messages from the dogs, and they would say, "You listen to us, and we're going to teach you." So the early things I started learning from animals, all what they're here, how they're here to help humans, and what their divine mission and purpose is here. Within 2 years of that, I I moved to Maui and I lived there for 2 years, and I started getting into all these esoteric practices of energy. Like we were learning how to work with energy, how to use energy for healing ourselves, how to use energy for healing our animals. We were learning how to, like, I mean, we would have like these ecstatic, like blissed out moments, right? With just like moving energy. And we were learning how to affect the external world even with energy. So what ended up happening there was my dog ended up transitioning, dying, and I was like heartbroken. And in that energy circle, I went to my teacher and I was like, "Please, please, I'm so heartbroken. Please help me know where she is. Please help me meet her." And so he put me in the middle of the circle, and he was a guy who had 7 near-death experiences, one of which was he documented where he was in the morgue, like banging on the freezer. So he put me in the middle of the room, and I did not understand this at the time, but in retrospect, I'm pretty certain that what he did with energy was activate the DMT in my brain.
Mm.
So I had in the middle of this circle what would be called a near-death experience, though not in a hospital, right? And so I was just gone. Like reality just was gone. All I knew was like I was consciousness itself. And I became one with every sound that ever existed. All voices were like mine, but not mine. I had my individuality, and yet I was at one with it. I became one with everything. I could see and yet not see everything. I was like at one with it. It was like I was passing through what I would call realms. And you could also call them, in a way, dimensions, but really they were realms of existence and consciousness and energy. And at some, what I call bandwidth, I unified or connected with my dog, and I was completely blissed out. And she was just saying, Mommy, I'm okay. There were a lot of other beings that I knew who came, like relatives, some beings that I knew who I didn't know. I'm jumping through this storyline, but we could spend an hour just talking about that. But at a certain point, he snapped his fingers, and somehow I was just back like in that room with all the people around me. And then they were just taking their hands and just for the energy, touching. All they had to do is take two fingers and touch me anywhere on my body. And then there was at least another half an hour of us all ecstatic, like hysterical laughter, curled up in like fetal positions of laughter and joy, because those dimensions or realms of experience are beyond the what we call this duality of this suffering, where we're in so much suffering and pain here. Like, even if our pain and suffering is, we perceive it to be normal, like, oh, we're just uncertain about something or doubtful or worried, or we have some kind of anxiety, like that's all suffering. None of that exists in these other higher, so-called higher or purer realms. They're just frequency bandwidths that we could associate with love and beyond, bliss, euphoria, ecstasy, joy, etc., pure acceptance. But in any case, one more piece to the storyline I'll just add is that, which is not a short story either, but after that, I think what happens is when your body gets to the point where you can just bring in so much light, energy, and power, you become, any individual can become recognizable in another way by other realms, other beings, even what we might call star families or interdimensional beings who are able to traverse these different realms. And even though they're non-physical, they're a different substance. Like, they're not carbon based, right? They might be frequency light based or crystal, what we call crystalline based. In any case, I had what's called a first contact experience. So
Wow.
on ship, yeah, that was a mind blower, right? And I mean, that I could spend an hour talking about that. But from that first contact experience, I understood you're connecting with these interdimensional beings. You're going to be given a whole lot of accelerated consciousness that you will integrate over time, over the next years, and bring it forward. And that's where most of this has come from. Because up until then, up until the time where my brother died, I was reading all the books, like all the books you read, and it just wasn't really making the progress. I was doing the tarot card readings. I was doing vision boards back then. And this is like, that was so long ago, way over 20 years ago. And I just wasn't finding the solutions that I knew my unique soul needed, right? So that's really, and I just want to say, even since then, and Maui was almost 20 years ago now, there was years of what I call trauma healing. That's why I say clear, heal, and resolve those parts of us that keep us sort of stuck and trapped in that old paradigm where we are believing what we call false narratives that society was trained to believe, that war is better than peace or harmony, or that it's not possible for us to have peace and harmony, or that it's not possible for us to live our highest fulfillment, or that it's not available to us because we're not rich or famous or whatever. Well, we have all of these faulty narratives, and they're not just mindset things, because the biggest challenge, in a way, to me, is that one of the greatest things happening for humans right now is they're recognizing, I can change my mindset. I can change the way I think about things and what I believe, and that will change my experience. And that's true. but we also need to change the energy that is sometimes associated. It's not only our emotions, but like if we have extreme anger or resentment or problems getting along in relationships because we're struggling with the old paradigm, I'm right, you're wrong, all those things that put us in some form of resist, react, struggle dynamics, right and wrong, arrogance, supremacy, even what we've got going on with work. I mean, I did workaholism. Oh my God, the slave driver. These are archetypical patterns that we're wired into. So that's all energy that can be cleared, healed, and resolved so that we're no longer operating that way. And
Mhm.
as we change the way we operate, we just become like, oh, we become someone so much that we fall in love with, that we're like, oh my God, this is so good. And then service and contribution becomes the driving force because we realize that's the
Exactly.
fastest road to joy. It's the
Yeah.
fastest road to joy, right?
Yeah. 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 When you get out of the imprisonment of your own mind, what
Yes.
naturally springs forth is love, compassion, service, empathy, tender, loving kindness. Basically,
Yes,
that's
exactly.
basic. That's extraordinary, though, Lori Ann, that the portal through which you actually entered this domain came from the dead, came from those who've been here before. That's quite extraordinary. I haven't heard that in some time. And so you must have had a natural facility that maybe you didn't even know that you had before your brother began to communicate with you.
Yeah, well, I now, a lot of the work that I do when I work with people, one of the first things I look at is their soul, what I call the soul agreements, the soul I don't even like the word contracts because contracts can always be rewritten, changed, rearranged.
Right.
But the soul has an agenda. Every one of us has an agenda. And the agenda for the soul is what are we going to somehow grow or partially it's going to be, if you look at it from like, old terminology, you got your karma, your dharma. So what are you going to heal and resolve? That's your karma. It's not that you did something wrong. It's that somewhere the soul has struggled through something or on something or regarding something. And those are themes that are going to come up over and over and over again for that soul. And it might be related to like their self-worth, their self-value, how they nurture and care for themselves. It might be related to relationships. It might be related to money. It could be related to multiple things, but it's the things that repeat over and over and over again in our lives that are like
Mhm.
hamster wheel experiences that we don't always see. That's the
Mhm.
same thing that happened to me, right? So that's the karmic stuff. That's the soul agenda. And then
Right.
there's the dharmic stuff, which that's the good stuff. And that's
Mm.
like, what is the soul meant to bring through and share in the world that is going to lead to their highest fulfillment, their deepest fulfillment, their most, and you are clearly a great example of being aligned with that, right? And there's always more, there's always richer depths. We're infinitely evolving. But when we're on our right trajectory, we're passionate about what we're doing. We love what we're doing. We would do it for free if we, you know what I mean? It's just about the service because it brings so much joy to us to be able to offer it, and it serves the divine. And I think that's also part of this new paradigm, right? Because the old paradigm is based in all this separation where we're all separate from one another and we don't see our connection or realize how we're all connected. And we definitely, sort of subscribe to a God that is separate from us, so to speak, in most of, the older teachings. And so the new paradigm is where the divine starts saying, I've played that game for infinite amount of times in all the expressions of me as individual
Exactly.
beings and individual. I'm done with that game. Now I want to awaken all beings in the game and start coming in through all beings as myself through that being. So, how can I, the divine, awaken all beings in ways that are in accordance with the expansion, with upliftment, with free will choice, so that they have to choose it? It's all free will, and allow myself, meaning the divine, to embody through the person and be in the game with them as one with them. That's the new paradigm. But it's a little bit slower because it requires us to, again, clear, heal, and resolve those parts of ourselves that are not allowing the infinite to come through us. Does that make sense?
Totally, totally. That's the Bodhisattva.
Yeah.
The Bodhisattva. Everyone needs to be on the path to gain enlightenment. And I will not go through the final portal to Nirvana till everybody else goes through before me.
That's exactly right. That is the Bodhisattva vow. You're right.
Yeah. And the way you're describing it is from divinity itself, is a beautiful, beautiful um, uh, presentation. So thank you
Yeah.
so much.
I just want to say, because we all have that magnificence within us, and we all have something that is so brilliant and so uniquely. That is part of what we're here to discover. And that's why we're meant to look at this insanity in the world and be like, I'm not playing that game anymore. I am choosing, I am choosing to be more of what I want in the world and bring that forward. Because that game is like, it is insane. I mean, just even what you were sharing today, the insanity of the game, of somebody saying, victory no matter what, and we're just going to go to war and everybody's going to die. Like, that's not the game we want to play. That's
No,
not what we want to play.
no,
This game is about bringing something so new.
beautiful into the world.
Right. And it's within all of us. Like, what I would love to do is just to allow each person to start to recognize that whatever your, highest fulfillment
Exactly.
is
Exactly.
what wants to be birthed in and through you,
Yeah.
whether it's about water or whatever, helping animals or nature or music or art, whatever it is, that is what's trying to come through you. And it's what your calling is. It's what the soul, part of the soul's agenda is, and it's meant for you. Right.
Exactly. Exactly. As Andrew Harvey says, what is it that wakes you up at 3 o'clock in the morning and in your heart of hearts, you got to do?
Yes.
That's why you were born, is to answer that call. And so you're, right there in the middle of the elixir
Yeah.
of, uh, of radiance, really,
Yeah.
truly,
Yeah.
really.
And
So
so,
let me
because
ask,
sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, when we start living that way, the other things, you become more and more impenetrable. In other words, you become like
Exactly.
impervious.
You
You
become
become
stronger
impervious.
energetically and less susceptible to mass media, diseases, bad emotions, etc. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Talk
And
to us about that.
if I could add one other piece to this that I just think it's worth saying, is that one of the things that science is now exploring more and more, and not just recently, of course, is the dormant DNA. So, like, prior to 2020, or no, sorry, prior to 2012, it was believed that the other 10 strands of DNA were junk. They just called them junk.
Yes,
2012, they started
yes,
labeling them as dormant. And since 2012 to 2024, they found 4 new codons in the DNA. And what we know spiritually, like, for those of us who've been working with the DNA, because that's one of the things I do. I work with the DNA to activate that dormant DNA, to awaken it. And it's dormant in everybody, but stored in there is your greatest potential, your highest fulfillment, the gifts you're meant to bring forward. And it can only be activated through frequency, through vibration. So it's not like you can just tell it with your mind to turn on, because you have to be, in a sense, elevated to a new frequency where that DNA can be awakened, right? It's frequency based. So, but in any case, when we talk about immunity, which we were just mentioning, you have codes of immunity in your DNA. Now,
Mm,
immunity to any and all viruses, chemtrails, chemicals, harmful radiation, technologies that could mess with you. So like I'm all in with like shungite around the neck and drinking healthy water and all those things. But I'm also like, let's just turn on that immunity. Now, when you turn that on and it's really activated, you start living fearlessly from those things that you've activated immunity to. You're not, I have sat next to somebody who was coughing on me with diagnosed COVID in literally for 2 hours, completely fearless, and did not get COVID, did not. So it's just because we have these codes of immunity within us. And so when you
Absolutely.
start having that, you're just living in a fearless state. And that's just a teeny little part of it. You start living
Yeah.
fear free. You're really free in a whole new way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Lori, you are a treasure.
Oh, thank
Are a
you.
treasure. And you can see from the chat that people are uh, very excited. So I think what we're going to do is adjourn to the after chat because there's a lot of people that I think will want to join you for more intimate discussion where we can all see each other. So we'll bring this to a close now. But thank you.
Yeah,
And
it's been my pleasure. Thank
thank you
you.
for telling us your story because it means that you can get really lost and you can find your way back home again.
Yes, for sure. For sure. We all have these capacities for sure. We'll talk about that more. I'm looking forward. I'll be there too. Thank you
Okay,
so much.
everyone. Thank you so much. This is Lori Ann Spagna, and she'll be joining the after chat. And then tomorrow, we're going to have a most interesting discussion about aging and some secrets of how you roll back aging. And as Lori's indicated, a lot of it is in that dormant DNA. When they were talking about junk DNA, man, I said, you guys have a long way to go. So that'll be tomorrow, everyone, on Humanity Rising. But Lori, you radiate radiance, and I really want to acknowledge you and thank you. And we all look forward to seeing you in the after chat.
Yeah,
So
I
that'll
want to
do
share too about that aging and DNA in there. So I'm really excited. I'll see you guys in. Thank you
it.
again, Jim.
Okay, be well. That'll bring us to a close, everyone. You'll see the link in the chat box for the after chat. You received it in your Zoom reminders. And then we'll see you again tomorrow for the secrets of rolling back aging. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now.